So this weekend we've got one of the most least anticipated undisputed title fights in boxing, which doesn't happen very often. Usually when it's an undisputed title fight, it's the two best fighters fighting each other for all the marbles. But this weekend it's Devin Haney versus George Kambosos for a second time in Australia. The first fight was in Australia when George Kambosos was the champion and Devin Haney was the challenger. But there was a rematch clause if Devin Haney was to win, which he did. George Kambosos gets an immediate rematch and he gets to still be in Australia, so they're doing that. I think the fight is going to be shown on Sky Sports over here in the UK, and I think the ring walk will be about 4 in the morning, half 4 in the morning, something like that. That's what it was last time anyway. It's at an arena this time, not a stadium, because I don't think they're going to sell a stadium this time for this fight because of how one-sided the first fight was. And that's what it was. It was very one-sided. Devin Haney just dominated George Kambosos with his jab for the most part. All night long, popping the jab. Stayed very consistent. Devin Haney, it was such a mature performance by Devin Haney. Yes, it wasn't the most exciting performance. But, you know, at 23 years old, to go in there and put on a bit of a boxing masterclass against a guy who was the undisputed lightweight champion. I know people like to say he's not the best in the division, George Kambosos, and that's fair after seeing his last performance against Devin Haney. But going into the fight, he was the man. He was the man who beat Teofimo Lopez, who beat Vasily Lomachenko. You know, so coming into this fight, he had some momentum, George Kambosos. So it was a credible champion that Devin Haney beat. But the performance from Devin Haney, you know, it was just easy. You know, it was an easy performance from him to beat George Kambosos, because George Kambosos, you know, he just couldn't really do anything. He was nullified. He couldn't really let his hands go, because every time he went to let his hands go, he was just beaten to the punch by Devin Haney, and he could never really get going. He could never really set his feet properly, because Devin Haney would just pop him with the jab, and he just have to keep resetting, and he just never got into the fight. And Devin Haney just grew more confident as the fight went on, and he was just busting George Kambosos up. And George Kambosos, as the fight, you know, got into the later rounds, he looked pretty deflated in there, and he looked like, you know, he didn't really have much more to give in terms of fight. He wasn't really going for it. So this time around, he's saying that he's training really hard. He's training like an animal, George Kambosos. He's living in the gym, literally. He's got a TV and a bed, and he's living in the gym where he trains, I think, in Australia. And, you know, trying to get back his world titles, which he lost. And he lost in dominant fashion. You know, it was not a close fight at all. Like, you could have gave every round to Devin Haney in there. I scored the fight 11 rounds to 1. I think I gave Kambosos 1 round. And I think that was a very close round where you could give it to Devin Haney, because it was just such a dominant performance. It wasn't an exciting performance, but it was a dominant performance. And I just see this fight being pretty pointless. But, you know, you have to uphold the contracts that you sign. And Devin Haney signed the contract to give George Kambosos an immediate rematch if he was to beat him, and to have the fight again in Australia. But Devin Haney, he's been doing this for a long time now. I know he's only 23 years old, but he's had 28, 29 pro fights. He's been boxing since he was about 8, 9 years old. He's been a pro since he was 17. Devin Haney, he's just got a really good boxing IQ. And I know people don't like this comparison, you know, because people don't really want to give Devin Haney the credit, you know, of being a good fighter. Like, some people don't want to give Devin Haney that credit, but he kind of reminds me of Floyd Mayweather, especially in Floyd Mayweather's later years, by the way that he can just control the centre ring with the jab and throw the right hands and stay very disciplined, not get into it too much in exchanges, and just keep very patient and very, very mature with it. You know, the fight kind of reminded me of Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao, in my opinion, the George Kambosos Devin Haney fight. And I know a lot of people might not agree with that, but that's what that fight reminded me of. The way that Haney managed to keep centre ring, you know, and just dominate from the outside like Floyd did against Manny Pacquiao. And Kambosos played the part of Pacquiao, where he could never really get into the fight. He could never really set up a sustained attack against Devin Haney. He might land a few shots here and there, but he could just never, you know, work on it. He could never just keep going in there against Devin Haney, because Devin Haney would, you know, just outland him. He would outwork him. Even if it looks like Devin Haney isn't doing much himself, it's just the consistency of the jab. And George Kambosos just didn't really have much answers for that in there. And I don't really see the same happening. Well, I see the same happening again Sunday morning when they fight again. I just don't see George Kambosos having the tools to beat somebody like Devin Haney. Yeah, he might have been training harder than he did last time, you know, coming in this time as a challenger. with the underdog mentality. He seems like the kind of fighter who thrives on that more than him being the champion, George Kambosos. But still, I just see Devin Haney having the more natural physical gifts in there, the more talented fighter. And sometimes, you're just up against somebody who's just more talented than you, who's just got more physical advantages than you, and there's just not much you can really do about it. And I see Devin Haney winning the fight dominantly once again, and he might even stop George Kambosos if he decides to go for it. But even if he didn't, I could still see him winning a wide, unanimous decision like he did last time. So yeah, comment below in the comment section. What do you guys think? Are you like me, not excited to see this fight again because you see it as very pointless? Comment below in the comment section. I'm out.